Hello and welcome. The USS Shenzhou is the first ship we see on Discovery and sets the visual tone for the show. Some people like it, others hate it. Sunrise, sunset. In this video, I'd like to take a look at what we know about the design process and how it compares to other similar looking ships in Star Trek history. This is the concept and design of the USS Shenzhou. Let's start off with the name Shenzhou. It's a reference to the Chinese space program's Shenzhou project, which sent their first man into space in 2003. The USS Shenzhou sent its first man into space in episode 2. As I mentioned in my previous Shenzhou video, John Eaves got the honor of designing the ship. He's been on the Star Trek art department since the Berman years and was assigned the mammoth task of designing the Enterprise E. He also contributed to the art of the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies. This makes him one of the most prolific Star Trek designers ever. At this point, fellow TNG era graduate Brian Fuller was still Discovery's showrunner. His directives to Eaves was that the ship needed to be flatter than the original Enterprise, and that Shenzhou must avoid using the round cylindrical warp nacelles. However, before Eaves could start work on Shenzhou, he needed to design Discovery first, so he copy-pasted the Ralph McQuarrie design. But getting back to Shenzhou, this meant that the final design came about much closer to the start of actual production and after Fuller departed the show. He used the X-planes from the 1940s and 50s as visual reference. This led to Discovery's Starship classes being named in honor of X-plane pilots, the Crossfield class USS Discovery being named after Scott Crossfield, and the Walker class USS Shenzhou being named after Captain Joe Walker. Looking at some of the early concept art, you can see that the NX-01 was the jumping on point. This early pass is essentially the NX-01, with the ship primarily being a saucer, with a notch cut out in the forward section. Then two strut-like hull areas that flank the sides of the bridge dome, and a rear-mounted floating center module, and triangular pylons connecting two raised warp nacelles. The raised warp nacelle concept would reach this point and man, if Discovery had gone with this design aesthetic, a lot more people would be happy. You can see the ship's registry and name are still located in the front and center of the saucer. Just behind it is the navigational deflector dish. It has a single needle just like the original Constitution class Enterprise. The housing is also very similar to how Eaves integrated the Enterprise East dish. Around the saucer is a design element very similar to what is found on the Franklin. When we look back at the nacelles, they're similar in appearance to what's seen on the teaser version of the USS Discovery. Yep, this one would have been nice. It makes me wonder if some fans would have liked the show more if the showrunners would have used this aesthetic for the entire series. Sunrise, sunset.
Klingon bastard, you've killed my son!
Anyway, moving along. When we look at the final design, the ship is primarily comprised of a saucer and two warp nacelles. We've seen this basic arrangement a number of times, most notably with Reliant, NX-01, and more recently with Franklin. The most apparent visual difference is whether the nacelles are raised above the saucer, as with NX-01 or Franklin, or below, like with Reliant. Now let's do a size comparison. The Shenzhou is larger than the Miranda class, though not by much. The long nacelles trick the eye into thinking that it's longer, but their saucer sections are in the same ballpark. Moving to the Constitution class, it's the same story. The Walker class has about the same interior space as the Constitution class when you account for the saucer section being taller and wider. This makes up for Shenzhou not having a substantial secondary hull. Though at this point, do size comparisons even mean anything? Discovery is clearly playing by its own rulebook. Star Trek canon is being stretched in pretty extreme ways in order to accommodate Discovery. That said, Star Trek canon is fiction, and fiction is malleable. Pretty much anything goes as long as the person in charge says so.
Ha! Yeah! I killed me!
That said, white windows. Discovery later establishes that the lighting of the interior sets match the exterior visual effects. If these windows look like this from the outside, they must look like this from the inside. So that's the video. I hope you enjoyed this look at the design process that culminated in the USS Shenzhou. As always, thank you so much to these folks for helping support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.